What if the Keyt Alves you see online isn't the whole story? Her rise came through late nights, bruises, and relentless training and overcoming mental obstacles. Critics saw beauty. She proved power and grit. This is the side of Keyt Alves you've never seen. Bauru was a place where sports were a way of life, woven into the rhythm of the streets and the voices of its people. For Keyt Alves, it was more than just the city where she was born. It was the backdrop to every childhood memory, every lesson in grit, every moment that shaped her into who she would become. She and her twin sister, Keyla, grew up in a household where the bonds ran deep. Family wasn't just important, it was everything. There were no grand luxuries, but there was always love, always the unspoken understanding that they had each other's backs no matter what. From the very beginning, having a twin meant life was a competition. Not the cold, bitter kind, but the type that sharpened instincts and ignited ambition. Whether it was racing each other home from school, playing games in the backyard, or challenging each other in the neighborhood park, the Alves sisters never did anything halfway. Keyt had an edge, not necessarily in skill at first, but in her will. She was the kind of kid who, if she lost, would quietly stew about it and then come back the next day determined to win. The balance wasn't easy. Homework got done late at night, often after practice had already drained her. Sometimes she would sit at her desk, still in her training clothes, replaying mistakes in her mind while trying to solve math problems. There were moments she questioned if it was worth it. The exhaustion, the constant schedule, the way her social life seemed smaller than everyone else's. But every time she stepped back onto the court, those doubts faded. The game had a way of making her feel alive in a way nothing else did. School filled her mornings, but the real education happened outside, where the streets of Bauru became her playground. She learned how to think fast in a crowded game of dodgeball, how to hold her own in matches where older kids towered over her, and how to use her speed and reflexes as weapons. Long before she knew what professional volleyball even looked like, she was falling in love with the rush of movement, the way sport could pull you completely into the present moment. Yet, for all her competitive fire, off the court, she was a different person. Shy, almost guarded, she preferred to watch and listen before speaking. She wasn't the loudest voice in the room, but when she did speak, it mattered. She was observant, soaking in details about people, noticing things others missed. Family gatherings, where relatives filled the house with music, food, and laughter, were her safe space. It was in those moments, sharing meals, telling stories, that she felt most herself. Keyt's parents worked hard, instilling in their daughters the values of discipline and responsibility. They taught her that dreams didn't come true just because you wished for them. They came true because you worked for them every single day. The Alves household was supportive but realistic. If Keyt and Keyla wanted to chase sports, they had to balance it with school, with helping at home, with being role models for the younger kids in the family. By the time she began to take volleyball seriously, that foundation was already in place. The discipline was there, the hunger was there, and the competitive streak, honed by years of playful rivalry with her sister, was impossible to ignore. She didn't yet know how far the game would take her, or how much the world outside Bauru would demand from her. But she knew this. She loved the adrenaline, the challenge, and the feeling of becoming better with every match, every point, every practice. In those early years, there was no fame, no spotlight, no talk of social media followers or public image. Just a girl in Bauru, a ball in her hands, and a spark inside her that refused to go out. The world might not have known her name yet, but even then, Keyt Alves was already writing the first lines of her story. But how does a shy girl from Bauru go from backyard games to finding the sport that would change her life? The first time Keyt Alves stepped into a school gym to try volleyball, it didn't feel like some grand, life-changing moment. It was just another day, another sport to try, another chance to burn off energy. She wasn't the tallest girl on the court. She didn't have the kind of physical presence that made coaches take notice right away. But she had something less obvious and far more dangerous to underestimate: an instinct for movement, lightning-fast reflexes, and a stubborn streak that refused to let her back down from a challenge.
Por 3 sets a 0. Parciais 25-18, 25-13, para enfrentar o vôlei Pinheiros pela segunda rodada da competição.
At the beginning, the sport felt awkward. The ball didn't always go where she wanted, the timing was tricky, and she quickly learned that volleyball wasn't just about strength. It was about precision, anticipation, and reacting in a split second. But that challenge hooked her. Every time she misjudged a ball, every point she lost, it lit a quiet fire inside her. She didn't just want to play, she wanted to master it. It wasn't long before she joined a local youth club, the kind where resources were modest, but the spirit was fierce. Practices were intense, endless drills, sprints, repetition until muscle memory took over. There wasn't much downtime, and when her friends were out relaxing or scrolling through their phones, Keyt was sweating on a court, working on her footwork or sharpening her serve. She didn't call it sacrifice back then, she called it normal. Her twin sister Keyla was always nearby, sometimes in the same drills, sometimes in her own training, but always pushing her. The two of them created their own kind of pressure, not the unhealthy kind, but the kind that made you want to keep up, to never let the other get too far ahead. If Keyla improved her spike, Keyt would push to make her digs cleaner. If Keyt nailed a new serve, Keyla would start working on hers until it was just as sharp. They didn't need a scoreboard to compete, they just needed each other. She began to stand out, not because she towered over the net, but because she read the game faster than most. She could anticipate where the ball was going before it even left an opponent's hands. Coaches started to notice the way she hustled for every point, the way she'd throw herself to the floor to save a ball no one else thought was reachable. She wasn't just playing, she was learning, absorbing every bit of strategy, and molding herself into a player you could rely on. Keyt didn't yet have a clear vision of the future. No posters of Olympic volleyball stars on her wall, no grand plan mapped out. All she knew was that this game gave her a purpose. It was a place where her shyness faded, replaced by a voice that called plays, gave encouragement, and demanded more from herself and her teammates. Without realizing it, she was laying the foundation for something much bigger. Long before the crowds, the cameras, or the headlines, there was just a girl in a small-town gym chasing a ball like her life depended on it. And in a way, it did. Because with every dive, every sprint, and every bead of sweat, Keyt Alves was slowly discovering not just a sport, but who she was meant to be. But what happens when natural talent meets the relentless demands of Brazil's professional volleyball system? By the time Keyt reached her teenage years, the quiet spark she'd carried onto the court as a kid had turned into something undeniable. Coaches, scouts, and even opponents were starting to notice her name. What began in a modest school gym was now pushing her into a different world, one where the stakes were higher, the crowds bigger, and the margin for error razor thin. When the invitation came to join professional youth academies, it felt like a door swinging open to everything she had dreamed of, even if she didn't yet know just how much it would cost to walk through it.
Keyt Alves é anunciada no SESI para a temporada 2024-2025.
Landing a spot at SESI Vôlei Bauru was both an honor and a shock to the system. The facilities were bigger, the players stronger, the competition relentless. Here, no one was just talented. Everyone on the court had been the standout player in their hometown. If she wanted to keep up, she had to prove herself all over again, every single day. The training was unlike anything she'd ever experienced. The echo of the ball against the court ringing out while most of the city was still asleep. Hours were spent running drills, perfecting technique until her muscles ached. Strength training sessions left her legs heavy, yet she still had to summon the speed for defensive sprints. Every detail mattered. The angle of her wrist on a pass, the precision of her positioning, the split-second decisions that could decide a point. With the opportunity came pressure, and it wasn't only from the coaches. Fans and local supporters started to follow her journey, expecting her to keep climbing. Her own expectations were even harsher. Every mistake felt heavier now. A missed dig wasn't just a missed dig, it was a crack in the image she was building. On the days she performed well, there was the rush of validation. On the days she struggled, the weight of disappointment seemed almost unbearable. She also learned that professional sport wasn't just about what happened on the court, it was about discipline, sacrifice, and mental toughness. Birthdays were missed for away games, social gatherings skipped for evening practices. Her body was in constant need of recovery. Ice baths, stretching routines, nutrition plans.
Bem, amigo, muito sim. Ó, os pontos, meu Deus.
And there was little room for the carefree rhythm of a normal teenager's life. The competition within the team was fierce. Teammates were also rivals for starting positions, and while there was camaraderie, there was also an unspoken understanding. If you couldn't deliver, someone else was ready to take your spot. It forced her to sharpen not only her skills, but her mindset. She learned to take criticism without letting it crush her, to channel frustration into fuel, and to find joy even when the game became a grind. Still, in the midst of the intensity, Keyt never lost sight of why she played. There were moments, a perfectly timed block, a crowd roaring after a hard-fought rally, that reminded her of the pure thrill she'd felt back in that small-town gym. Those flashes of joy kept her anchored when the pressure threatened to pull her under. At volleyball, she wasn't just developing as a player, she was transforming into an athlete who could handle the demands of the professional world. The court was no longer just a place to play, it was a proving ground, and every match, every practice was a step in defining not just her career, but who she was becoming. And as her game improved, how did the world outside the court start to take notice? As Keyt's performances on the court began drawing more attention, so did her life beyond the game. What had started as casual posts for friends and family slowly turned into a growing audience, her social media platforms becoming windows into her world. Fans wanted to see more than just match highlights. They wanted the human side, the moments in between the games. And Keyt, naturally outgoing in some settings despite her shyness as a child, enjoyed sharing slices of her life, snapshots in her favorite outfits, behind-the-scenes glimpses of travel days, candid photos with her twin sister, and quiet moments with family. Fashion became one of her favorite forms of self-expression. She loved the creativity of putting a look together, the confidence that came from stepping out in something that felt authentically her. Modeling opportunities followed, and she embraced them, not as a distraction from her sport, but as another part of who she was. To her, the volleyball jersey and the stylish dress weren't opposites. They were just different uniforms for different parts of her life. But the more visible she became, the more the narrative began to shift in ways she couldn't control. Headlines started calling her the beautiful volleyball player, as if her athletic achievements were a footnote to her appearance. Comment sections filled with people who knew nothing of her training, but had endless opinions about her looks, her clothes, her poses. To some, she was more influencer than athlete, as though being feminine somehow disqualified her from being taken seriously on the court. It stung more than she admitted at first. She had worked years to earn her place in professional volleyball, surviving grueling training sessions, the mental grind of competition, and the constant pressure to improve. And yet, too often, her performances seemed secondary in the public conversation. The weight of that perception was heavy, not because she doubted her worth, but because she knew how hard it was for women in sports to be respected for their skills alone. Still, Keyt refused to shrink herself to fit someone else's idea of what an athlete should be. She didn't see any contradiction in loving both a powerful spike and a perfectly tailored outfit. If anything, she felt that showing all sides of herself could inspire others, especially young girls, to believe they didn't have to choose between strength and style. The criticism didn't stop, but over time, she learned to filter it out. For every dismissive comment, there were messages from fans thanking her for breaking stereotypes, for showing that you could be competitive and glamorous, driven and playful, fierce on the court, and unapologetically yourself off it. Her social media was no longer just a personal outlet. It became a platform with reach, a place where she could tell her own story before anyone else tried to tell it for her. And though the public eye could be unforgiving, Keyt understood that it also gave her a chance to connect, to inspire, and to redefine what it meant to be a professional athlete in a world that still too often tried to put women in boxes. She wasn't just the beautiful volleyball player. She was Keyt Alves, and she intended to make sure people knew exactly what that meant. But could she prove to the critics that she was more than just a headline? Keyt had long since stopped being the wide-eyed rookie who nervously stepped onto the Superliga court for the first time. By now, she had carved out her place in the starting lineup, no longer defined by her potential, but by her consistency. Every game was a chance to prove that she wasn't just filling a spot, she was earning it. The veterans respected her for it. They had seen plenty of young players come and go, overwhelmed by the speed and intensity of Brazil's highest league. But Keyt had adapted. She wasn't just keeping up, she was thriving. Her defensive game became her signature. Diving for impossible digs, reacting in fractions of a second, reading attackers before they even made contact. These moments started to define her highlight reels. There were matches where the scoreboard told one story, but the crowd knew the truth. It was Keyt's saves that had kept them in it. Analysts began mentioning her name more frequently during broadcasts, noting not just her skill, but her composure in high-pressure situations, sparking conversations about how she was becoming one of the league's most dependable defensive specialists. The recognition didn't stop at the court's edge. She began appearing in interviews where she talked about her training routines, her inspirations, and her love for the sport. Her social media, already popular, became a place where fans could see both the fierce competitor and the grounded, approachable person behind the jersey. The balance was tricky. Media attention brought new opportunities, but also new challenges. With the praise came scrutiny. Every mistake on the court was magnified, every decision off it second-guessed. Some critics tried to frame her as a distraction to herself, claiming her off-court presence and fashion sense somehow detracted from her game. Others expected nothing less than perfection in every match, forgetting that even the best athletes have off days. Keyt learned to live with the noise, to separate her identity from the fleeting opinions of strangers. It wasn't easy, but it was part of the territory she had chosen. Her growing status also meant her role within the team began to shift. She wasn't just the young player learning from others anymore. She was becoming someone the younger ones looked up to. She started sharing what she had learned about discipline, the mental side of competition, and how to bounce back from mistakes. Whether it was during a quiet moment in training or on the sideline in the middle of a tense set, her voice began to carry more weight. Keyt's vision for herself extended beyond statistics and championships. She wanted to be remembered not just for what she achieved on the court, but for what she represented. She wanted to be proof that there was more than one way to be an athlete, that you could be competitive and compassionate, disciplined and creative, strong and unapologetically yourself. For every young girl watching from the stands or behind a phone screen, wondering if she belonged, Keyt wanted her story to be the answer. She was still writing that story, but one thing was already clear. She was no longer just a name on the roster. She was becoming a name to remember. And behind all the success, what was the part of the story no one was talking about? Under the glow of stadium lights, with the roar of the crowd washing over her, Keyt Alves looks every bit the image of success. The highlight reels capture her in perfect form, diving for impossible saves, smiling after a hard-fought point, posing for photos in her team's jersey. Her social media feeds show magazine shoots, polished captions, and moments of joy frozen in time. But what those images don't show are the quiet nights in unfamiliar hotel rooms, the sting of ice against sore knees after hours of training, and the long, lonely flights that seem to blur together over the course of a season. Her career is a constant balancing act, and the personal side of her life often takes the hit. Relationships strain under the weight of her schedule. Friends invite her to birthdays, family gathers for celebrations, but more often than not, she's miles away, either preparing for a match or recovering from one. The calendar isn't hers. It belongs to the season, the fixtures, and the demands of a profession that doesn't pause for personal milestones. Even when she's physically present, part of her mind stays with the game, replaying strategies, thinking ahead to the next challenge. But through all of it, the driving force remains. Keyt's love for the game is deeper than the trophies and the applause. It's in the pride she feels pulling on her club's jersey, in the honor of representing her country, in the way her heart races before the first serve of a big match. She knows the game has given her more than it has taken. It has shaped her, challenged her, and taught her to stand up under pressure. It's also given her a platform, and she feels a responsibility to use it honestly. She wants to inspire, not just by winning, but by showing the reality of an athlete's life, the highs and the lows, the confidence and the doubts, the grit behind the glamour. When she looks ahead, she knows the other side of being an athlete will always be there. The travel, the injuries, the mental battles, they are part of the deal. But so is the joy of a perfect set, the rush of a comeback win, and the knowledge that she's living the dream she once chased as a little girl in Bauru. Keyt's message is simple but powerful. The other side of the game is just as real as the victory, and it's in facing that side head-on, without losing her passion, that she truly defines herself, not just as a player, but as a person.